For us, solitude often hurts. But your body, and the bodies of countless animals, evolved with two very different systems running underneath the surface. One system pulls you toward the group, the other pushes you away from it. Which one wins depends on something deeper than mood. It depends on strategy. In 1989, a listening station built by the U.S. Navy to track submarines picked up a sound it was never designed to hear, a whale call, somewhere deep in the Pacific, unlike anything on record. It called at 52 hertz, too high for a blue whale, too low for a fin whale. No other whale on Earth has ever been recorded answering it back. For more than 3 decades, that same voice has kept singing into the dark, and what you are about to discover is far stranger and far more personal than a story about a whale. Because somewhere in your own life, you have probably chosen to be alone, not because no one wanted you, not because you were left behind, but because, for a little while, being by yourself felt like the only honest thing to do. Scientists call the animal behind that lone 52 hertz, call the loneliest whale in the world. Researchers like Dr. Kate Stafford, an oceanographer who has spent years listening to its calls through hydrophone networks, have tracked its migration for over 30 years. It moves through the ocean on its own schedule. It never travels with a pod. And here is the detail that changes everything. Nobody actually knows if it is lonely at all. Think about an octopus. Almost every species lives its entire life without a single companion. No pod, no pack, no parent after the first few weeks. Researchers studying cephalopod behavior, including work associated with biologist Jennifer Mather, have found that this is not a tragedy playing out in the deep. It is a deliberate design. An octopus without a rigid skeleton needs space, camouflage, and silence to protect a body that has almost no natural defenses. For that animal, solitude is not the absence of connection, it is the presence of safety. So here is the question worth sitting with. When you needed space from everyone, was that really about being unwanted? Or was some older, quieter part of you doing exactly what the octopus does, clearing the noise so you could think, heal, or simply survive a moment that felt too loud? Not every animal that keeps its distance is avoiding the world entirely. Some are simply choosing who gets close and when. Orangutans, unlike most great apes, spend the majority of their adult lives moving through the forest canopy without a group at all. Mothers stay close to their young for years, sometimes the longest childhood of any animal besides humans. But once that bond eases, adult orangutans often travel alone for long stretches, crossing paths with others only briefly before separating again. Field researchers have noted that this is not a failure to socialize. It is simply a different rhythm of connection, built around a forest that cannot support large, food-competing groups. The bond is real. It is just spaced out differently than a herd, or a pack, or a human friend group texting every day. Not every animal that spends time alone is built for it, the way an octopus is. And this is where the story gets more personal than you expected. Elephants live inside deeply bonded, emotionally rich herds for their entire lives. A herd remembers, grieves, and protects its own. But researchers observing older male elephants have documented something unusual. As these males age, many begin to drift from the group entirely. They wander for stretches of days or weeks, with no companions at all, only rejoining briefly during certain seasons. For decades, field observers assumed this was simply what happened to elephants once they were pushed out. But closer, patient observation tells a different story. Many of these males choose the distance. They are not exiled. They are self-selecting, stepping back from a social structure that costs enormous energy to maintain, at a stage of life when that energy is better spent elsewhere. That is not abandonment. That is budgeting. And if you have ever pulled back from a group chat, a friend circle, or a family gathering because you simply did not have the energy to perform connection that day, you already understand exactly what that elephant is doing. But that is not even the most surprising part of this story. Chimpanzees, one of our closest living relatives, live in complex, highly political social groups. Primatologist Jane Goodall spent decades documenting just how emotionally intricate those groups are. Alliances, rivalries, grief, even something close to grudges. And yet, within those same tight communities, researchers have repeatedly observed individual chimpanzees choosing to separate themselves temporarily, sometimes after a conflict, sometimes after the loss of a close companion, sometimes for no visible reason at all. They simply step to the edge of the group and stay there, alone, for hours or days, before returning as if nothing happened. If you have ever made it this far into a story like this one, you are probably someone who notices these small parallels between animal behavior and your own quiet moments, and if that is you, sticking around here each week means you will keep finding more of them. What researchers increasingly believe is that this withdrawal serves a purpose almost identical to what a grieving or overwhelmed human does when they close the bedroom door. It is not a breakdown of the social bond. It is a temporary suspension of it, so the animal can process something the group cannot process for it. Here is where the comparison gets uncomfortable, in the best way. Humans have spent generations treating solitude as a symptom, something to be fixed, medicated, or apologized for. But if an elephant can walk away from its herd to conserve itself, and a chimpanzee can step to the edge of its troop to grieve in private, then maybe the instinct in you that occasionally wants the same thing is not a flaw in your wiring. Maybe it is one of the oldest, most functional behaviors carried inside you. That does not mean every kind of aloneness is healthy, for an animal or for you. Wolves, for example, are almost never voluntarily solitary. A lone wolf, contrary to the romantic image, is usually an animal in crisis, pushed out of a pack, searching for territory, at far greater risk without the protection of the group. Tracking collar data collected over multiple seasons shows these lone wolves travel far greater distances, eat less consistently, and face steeper odds than any wolf still inside a pack. For a wolf, forced solitude is dangerous. Chosen solitude, for an elephant or an octopus, is strategic. The difference between the two is not the absence of others. It is whether the animal walked away on its own terms. This is the line worth remembering the next time you catch yourself worrying that wanting space makes you broken. Ask which kind of alone you actually are. Are you the wolf, pushed out, unsafe, and searching for a way back in? Or are you the elephant, deliberately stepping away from a group you could rejoin any time you choose? The two can look identical from the outside. From the inside, they are almost opposite experiences. And that difference matters just as much in your life as it does in theirs. But that is not even the strangest part of what science has found. Some researchers now believe certain marine mammals may experience something closer to a spectrum of solitude, rather than a fixed trait. The same 52 Hz whale that opened this story has at various points been recorded traveling closer to migration routes used by blue and fin whales, only to drift away from them again weeks later. It is not permanently isolated. It moves toward contact, then away from it, again and again, on a rhythm no one has fully decoded. If that sounds familiar, it should, because you probably do the same thing. You reach out, you pull back, you crave company for a while, and then you crave quiet just as intensely. That oscillation is not confusion. In a surprising number of species, it appears to be the normal shape solitude takes when an animal is emotionally intact, rather than emotionally broken. This is where the story gets harder to look away from. If solitude, chosen deliberately and temporarily, shows up across species as different as elephants, chimpanzees, octopuses, and possibly even whales, then the instinct is not uniquely human. It is not a modern condition invented by overstimulation in small apartments. It is an old survival tool, refined across millions of years, still running quietly underneath your own decisions about who to answer and who to let go to voicemail tonight. The animals in this story never explain themselves. They do not owe anyone a reason for the distance they put between themselves and the group. They simply take it, use it, and return when they are ready, or in the whale's case, keep singing, whether or not anything ever answers. So the next time you find yourself needing to disappear for a while, even from people who love you, remember the elephant that walks away to conserve what it has left. Remember the octopus that was never built for company in the first place. And remember the whale that has spent 30 years calling into an ocean that has never once called back and has kept singing anyway. Maybe that is not the sound of loneliness at all. Maybe it is simply the sound of something ancient inside all of us, choosing, on its own terms, exactly when to be alone and exactly when to come back. Think about the last time you turned your phone face down, let a message sit unread, or skipped an invitation not because you didn't care, but because some part of you needed the room to breathe first. You probably called it being antisocial, or flaky, or tired. But strip away the guilt for a moment, and look at it the way a field researcher would look at an elephant drifting from its herd. It is not disconnection, it is regulation. It is a body doing exactly what bodies across the animal kingdom have done for millions of years, budgeting its energy so it has something left to give once it returns. If any of this reminded you of a moment when you needed distance from people who cared about you, or a time you noticed an animal choosing solitude the way you sometimes do, drop a comment and share it. And if this changed how you see being alone, a like helps this find someone who needs to hear it tonight.